Nelson Mandela once said of education that education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. So I ask, if education is our most powerful weapon, why aren't we making sure that we get the best education possible and we're getting the best bang for our buck when it comes to our education? So today I'm going to discuss the debate between online learning courses, so independent study or e-learning programs, and traditional classroom setting instruction. Now, I tend to err on the side of the debate that says that really the only way we can truly learn and be satisfied with our learning is through in-class traditional education. I do not feel that online courses are effective for high school students. I see the purpose and the effectiveness behind it for college students who are goal-driven, who have an end goal, who know what they're doing, know what they want. But for high school students who are still trying to learn how to prioritize, how to have self-control, how to manage their time better, I just don't think that they can be effective. And I think that has to do with several different things, primarily the lack of face-to-face education with teachers, the unstructured setting, so there's no classroom, there's rarely due dates, so there's not a lot of structure, and then the inability to measure whether or not they're meeting learning outcomes. Because we're going to school to learn and we're going to school to meet certain outcomes, and if we can't measure those things, it can't really be effective. So that's kind of what I'm going to discuss today. And to begin, in a New York Times article, Mark Edmondson, an English teacher at the University of Virginia, said and gave a list of top 8 reasons why high school students are dropping out of school. That list included poor academic performance, an inability to balance between academics and work and social life, not enough individual attention, and a lack of student engagement. And I think the key factor that contributes to each of those things, the overall key factor, is high school students are still learning how to prioritize. They're still learning how to set and meet goals and how to self-motivate and manage their time wisely, and I just think online learning can't provide that. Additionally, a report was published by the Children's Trends database that said 3,030,000, or about 10% of high school students, drop out each academic year. That rounds out to about 8,300 students dropping out each day because of those things, like an inability to prioritize and manage their time and just a lack of general overall motivation. Now, if those are the reasons students are dropping out, I find it difficult to justify putting a high school student in online learning, even for just a few classes, because enrolling in online distance learning programs requires a student to be actively engaged in their learning, and it requires them to be goal-driven, to be self-motivated. There's not a lot of structure. There's not a teacher looking over their shoulder. Sometimes there is a parent around all the time, but they're on their own a lot, and they have to display a lot of self-control, and those are all things that they're going to be learning. That's the purpose of school. That's the purpose of going to a classroom, to learn those things and to learn those lessons and reap the consequences of not learning those things. And I think that online learning can't really provide that for students in high school. A popular educational professor, Shi Swan Wang, expressed her opinion on the subject in an Inside Higher Ed article that said online courses are only successful when students are satisfied with their learning experience and when students experience success in learning course content. Now, I've had a lot of personal experiences with this. I've taken about 6 independent study classes, and some of them are the classes that require a lot of work, a lot of writing, classes like speech, where we actually have to do things and we get feedback. Those teach you things. You get things out of that. You learn how to be better at something. But there are some courses that I've taken that I don't even know what they were really about. There's not a lot of engagement. There's not a lot of need to know the course content. You're just kind of reading the lessons, memorizing the quizzes and the answers, and taking the test because it's the same thing. I don't really feel like I was engaged. I didn't have a teacher getting me excited or showing me why I needed to know this, and so it really wasn't an effective way for me to learn. It was just an effective way for me to move my GPA. Now, being in college, that was a bit easier for me because I was more goal-driven, but had I done that in high school, I probably wouldn't have even finished those courses, and it would have been a large waste of money. And they're just not designed for high school students, I don't think. I mean, this point, and these things don't go undisputed. A man named Gilly Salmon, the author of E-Moderating, The Key to Teaching and Learning Online, argues that online courses are specifically designed for interaction, engagement, flexibility, and feedback. And some educators even argue that e-learning courses are more effective than face-to-face instruction because they allow the student to work at their own pace and their own way. However, for that point to be valid, a high school student would have to be actively motivated to learn and to learn those skills and participate in the class. And statistically speaking, and from personal experience, that's not a common characteristic among the majority of high school students. So I just don't think that point's valid. I don't really think that that is something that a lot of high school students are going to exhibit. I think that's going to be in some very special cases that I'll discuss later, actually. And another key issue surrounding high school students taking online courses is the complete and total lack of face-to-face interaction. This is one of the main arguments against it, in fact. So Mark Edmondson, again, said about teaching and the importance of face-to-face instruction that with every class we teach, we need to learn who the people are in front of us. We need to know where they are intellectually, who they are as people, and what we can do to help them grow. Teaching is a matter of dialogue. So in other words, Edmondson is saying that to help students grow, to really teach them, teachers have to know them, and that's not something that can be done in online learning. He goes on to say that the internet teacher, even one who responds to their students via email, can never have the immediacy of contact that the on-scene teacher can, and they cannot have the sensitivity to the unspoken moods and enthusiasms of their students. So I think that that's very poignant. That's very well said. Teachers who are online, who don't get to know their students every day, they're not effective. They can't help their students because each student learns in a different way and each student's unique, and without a teacher engaging them and getting to know them one-on-one, they can't have that adjusted learning ability or learning or instruction from their teacher. They can't have that. It's not personal to them. It's just general. They're meant for everyone. It's a one-size-fits-all system. However, supporters of distance education have pointed out that because technology has come so far in the last 10 years, especially in the world of education, that it needs to become more integrated. And I do agree with that. I think that teachers can be using more technology in the classroom to teach students how to appropriately use technology in learning and growing, but I don't think that putting students strictly in an online learning system is an effective way to do that. Because as Angela Murphy, an educational researcher for the Babson Survey Research Group, has said, online education is a one-size-fits-all endeavor. It tends to be a monologue and not a dialogue, specifically in the relationship between instructors and their students. So that lack of immediate communication that is present in online courses of study makes it really difficult for those students who are going to need more individualized help, who are going to need more special attention. And I think that can put students at a risk to lose any desire to be motivated and goal-driven in the field of education. I think that without that immediate feedback, without that immediate positive criticism, that students are not going to be motivated. They're not going to understand what it's like to have somebody to care about them. Another one of the problems with online learning is the lack of ability to measure how they're meeting their learning outcomes. So the Babson Survey Research Group did a study where they asked professors what they thought of the learning outcomes of online education and face-to-face instruction, how those compared. These are the results. And so the results showed that in general, professors do not have a positive view of the learning outcomes for online education. Nearly 2/3 of the professors questioned said that they believe the learning outcomes for online courses are inferior or somewhat inferior to the outcomes for face-to-face courses. The last third questioned reported that the two are equally comparable, and then less than 6% said that they were superior or somewhat superior when compared to face-to-face instruction. Another chart published by the Pew Research Center showed that when asked how they felt about online learning, 71% of instructors said that they did not feel that it was as effective. So we're going to school to learn. We're not going to school to get through it. Especially in high school, we're going to school to figure out who we are. So in simple terms, the outcomes show that teachers generally don't support online education. They would prefer a student to be in a classroom. And for experts such as Shi Huan Wang, this outcome is of great concern, and students need to be meeting those outcomes. That's not something that can be measured in online school. Now, there are a few exceptions when it comes to that. There are special situations, really bad illnesses, injuries, situations at home, high school athletes, people who are busy with extracurriculars. Online courses can help them. It's almost a blessing sometimes, and it can allow them to have more flexibility in their schedule and allow students with severe and chronic illnesses like cancer and things, I've seen that a lot at my work, to be able to be successful and get their high school education. So I think when it comes to online learning, overall, it's not going to be effective for everyone. In fact, for most people, it's not. So I think parents need to ask themselves before enrolling their students in online education, is this right for my student? Does my student need instructor interaction? If so, can they get it through this program? Is this effective for them? Will they learn the way that they need to? If the answer to any of these is no, then parents need to steer away from online education, slow down, and keep their kids in schools.